the moors.
Need some Alan Jackson. I'll tell you who doesn't feel like 25 this morning. That's LeBron James. Big shout out to you, Kevin Durant. Nice job last night. LeBron's still my number one guy, but Kevin was impressive. Steph Curry. Yeah, I mean, how do you knock Steph Curry with the Warriors? All right, the show. I do my sports show on Monday. Why am I talking about sports on this show? The show is called The Business of Life. 20 years, 15,000 interviews. I work so hard to find people in this country that actually know what the heck they're talking about. I find people that have been to the mountaintop. I find people and authors and entertainers that, in fact, cheap plug for next week, we've got a politician. I'm so curious, Aaron. Are you curious, Aaron, about next week's show? We're going to have assemblymen on. I want to pull back the curtain and find out where they eat, the perks, what kind of hotels they're staying in, and what are they really doing for us? I mean, we're paying their salaries. What are they doing? That's next week's show. So if you're interested in politics, tune in next week. All right, to finish up this segment, maybe your other caller's trying to call in. What happens, Aaron, if he's trying to call in?
We can throw them all on.
We kick Josh off? Huh?
No, we can throw them all on.
We can. We should have them on together at some point down the road. This guy will be back.
You will now be placed into the conference.
What is that?
You are currently the only person.
What is that? What was that? Are you working for AT&T, Aaron? Is this a part-time? What was that?
Don't worry, I'm getting him back on. He's fine.
Is he? Josh, are you there?
I am.
Yeah,
this
is the most modern station in Southern California, but what was that? My God.
That's called winning from failing.
Exactly. We're growing, Coach.
The title of the book is called Winning from Failing. So I got to kick you off. We're going to get the next guest on. You will be back here in a couple of weeks. I want to continue the conversation because it's a big subject. We all fail. We all experience failing. Real failing, in my eyes, is being a quitter. And I wear a ring that says winners never quit. And I think we're going to call our next guest. That's why I'm kicking Josh off. That's why I'm kicking him off. What is quitting, or what is real failure to you?
If you're speaking to me, it is in fact quitting.
Okay.
I was brought up with that mantra that my father brought me up in. I learned to go back to those core competencies of honor and a hard work ethic. And to him, you just never quit, no matter what it is. You can fail, but never quit. You can fail, but don't do it again. But don't ever quit.
Don't do it again. So in my business coaching, what I try to do is help people think differently. That's another show. I should do a book in my own show sometime called The Thinking Room. But we're talking about this book, Winning from Failing, with the author Josh Seibert. So when you look at winning from failing, it's complex because our educational system doesn't encourage failing. It encourages everybody getting a trophy. I'm not going to get into that. But just to finish off, Josh, thank you for everything that you've done. Listen, stay on or go to Hometown Station, listen, because my next guest, Josh, for you personally, because he's talking about branding, and he's one of the great guys in the country. He's a true expert on branding. So will you keep listening on hometownstation.com?
I will. Thanks for having me on the show, Ron. I truly appreciate your invitation. It was an honor and pleasure to talk to you.
It was my honor, and I'll have you back in a couple weeks. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the show is called The Business of Life. I'm here on award-winning KHTS. And I'm not kidding you. We won the best radio station, best community radio station in California. My next guest, I've had I didn't really want to put him on, to be honest with you, because I've had a lot of these guys on over the years, 15,000 interviews. Branding kind of makes me yawn, but not this guy. This guy didn't make me yawn. You know why? Because he was authentic, he was smart, he was sincere, he was honest. What other adjective can I use, Aaron? Clever? No, he's not clever. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. Welcome to Southern California. It's 90 degrees, Vince Perry. How are you, pal? Vince?
Your hometown station.
I need a new somebody running the board here. Is Vince on with us? He's not on. Okay, keep talking. Keep talking. So sometimes in modern radio, things just don't go perfectly. All right, so when you look at winning in life, and that's what I teach people how to do, I wrote a book called The Thinking Room. In fact, I'm doing a coaching this afternoon with a business up in Bakersfield, and he's a young guy, and he's stuck. He's stuck because he's still doing the same things that he's been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. He's stuck because he's afraid to make adjustments. He's afraid to change anything because, as he said to me on the phone a couple of times, and I don't take clients on and else I do a lot of interviewing. I want to find out a little bit about them, what his background is. I want to find out how they think. Not everybody can take coaching. Not everybody wants to change. And change, it's a big part of our life. We live in change every day, especially in 2017. Things are changing by the second. So when you look at business or you look at winning, you've got to be flexible and you've got to be able to make adjustments. All right, we've got our phone system working on KHTS 1220. As I said earlier, I've 15,000 plus interviews. I've done so many interviews with branding experts. I didn't really want to put this guy on, but I do pre-interviews. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I really like the guy. But you know why I liked him? Because he was honest, straightforward. I asked him a couple of questions, and he was authentic. What else did I say earlier before?
Genuine.
He was genuine.
You even called him handsome at one point.
I did not say he was handsome. His book is called The Identity Crisis, and being an older gentleman, his expertise is in the pharmaceutical industry. It's Perry Branding Group. If you want to check out his website. Vince Perry, welcome to Southern California. It's 90 degrees. How are you, bud?
It's 90 degrees here in New York as well.
Oh,
Thanks
stop it. Is it really?
Yes, it is.
Oh, my God. So I enjoyed our pre-interview. I just think you're one of the smartest guys I've met in a long time, one of the honest guys. Is it difficult working in an industry that, how do I want to say it? I'm not sure the pharmaceutical industry always tells the truth. Can we start that way?
Well, they intend to tell the truth. That's part of the identity crisis, is they try to create brand identities that are oftentimes perceived as somewhat false and begging for your attention. People don't want to buy healthcare products. They have to. So there's a built-in resentment about it. So I think they really try too hard sometimes, and that's what you're probably hearing in that kind of insincerity.
Well, yeah. I don't want to. I'm going to have you back, so we'll talk about this in a couple of other shows. Today I'm going to be nice to you. You're listening to The Business Life on KHTS, award-winning KHTS. You can listen on hometownstation.com, like Josh Seibert, our last wonderful guest. So Vince Perry, P-A-R-R-Y, wrote a book called Identity Crisis, and I'm looking forward. It hasn't arrived yet, but I promise you I'll read it through, so next time you're on, we'll be able to get into the chapters. But what is a brand today? I read a lot of your excerpts, which were great, but what is a brand today? I think we're all confused what a brand is.
Well, a brand is branding is really about the ownership of ideas. It's about taking values that customers esteem about themselves and then transposing those values onto a product or service so that when a customer engages with that brand, they see a flattering reflection of their own values. So a brand is sort of a surrogate thing you can purchase that helps you either restore your identity or reaffirm your identity.
Interesting. So here's one of the excerpts from your book I thought was interesting. I don't feel myself today. People do not celebrate the buying process when they become ill. They are now forced to buy brands they don't want but rather need. When faced with the prospect of, say, herpes, overactive bladder, or depression, consumers experience, what do consumers experience?
A loss of identity, a loss of self. Basically, consumer goods branding is a celebration of self. It's really, oh, look, I got a new iPhone, or I got a new BMW car, or a Dior bag, or whatever. It's a way for people to select brands that reaffirm their identity and celebrate their identity. But when someone has an illness, and especially a chronic illness like the ones that you mentioned there, that illness robs people of parts of their identity. It diminishes their ability to control themselves in the way they want to control themselves, and to determine their own futures in the way they want to determine their own futures. So they feel diminished, and they feel as if part of their identity is gone. So healthcare brands really strive, if they're true to themselves, to help restore whatever has been lost to illness.
Wow, that's such a great answer. Let's delve into this thing. Let's get in the weeds a little bit. The book is called Identity Crisis. A new friend, Vince Perry, will be on again because he's got so much to offer all of us. Lining up some questions, one of the questions I want you to think about is how does a smaller company brand themselves? But let me go back to this identity crisis thing, because I think most of us in some form suffer. How does a company help a customer not lose their identity? I mean, it seems to me you just nailed it. So do these big companies care about us?
They do. They really do. They're mostly science-based people, and they're not tremendously savvy marketers in the sense of knowing their customer base as well as, let's say, maybe consumer marketers do. They deal a lot with doctors, so that tends to be their first line of customers that they try to connect with. And I just think the disconnection is not disingenuousness. I think it's just the nature of the business really draws people to it that are more, was it left-brained than right-brained? Whatever the analytical side of the brain is or whatever, and they don't understand the emotional connections often that they have to establish, which is why they hire people such as myself and colleagues like me.
I mean, you're a pretty forthright guy. Why did you write the book Identity Crisis? I know that's a standard question, probably asked 1,000 times, but I'm curious in Southern California, why did you write the book?
Well, I teach healthcare branding at Rutgers Pharma MBA program, and when I was sort of researching, I started doing my syllabus, which is basically drawing down from my 30-plus years of experience in branding, very large household name brands like Lipitor and Prozac and Botox and hospitals and other brands like that. And as I began to search for books that could help my students, I couldn't find any, and I did a lot of research. At first, I thought I was just missing something, and there are lots of books on branding, but no real books on healthcare branding. And healthcare branding is so different that none of the consumer books, the books about consumer branding, really address the unique situations that I was addressing in the class I teach. And then as I began writing it, I began to realize that more and more people outside of the industry, the subject of healthcare, it really touches their hearts as well. So I expanded the topic to cover, branding in general, healthcare branding, and how it affects people and illness affects people, and then, of course, give some advice about how to create brands that really engage customers. So that's sort of a long answer to your question, but...
well, I hope you sell 1 million books to these pharmaceutical company employees and scientists and people in management, because, there's like a joint pill. Have you ever seen the size of a joint pill? Aaron, stop that smiling. This is for people who have joint issues. Okay, you're too young to have joint issues. But it's a big white pill. It's hard as a rock. I mean, why can't they put those ingredients in some other easier pill to swallow? Ridiculous.
I know. It's funny. What governs those decisions off of is that lots of times they want to be able to say it's just one pill, twice a day or something. If they basically made it half the size, they'd have to say, oh, it's 2 pills twice a day. And I don't think that they want to make it look easier as 1 pill. But I agree with you.
Well, I don't want to beat up the brand, but at Walgreens they were selling 2 bottles for the price of 1. They're trying to get it off the shelf. They're trying to move it because people aren't buying it, And yeah. I bought 2 for 1. Shows you how smart I am. I tried to take the pill. I broke it in half, and then I almost choked on the other half. I mean, anyway, talking to a wonderful new friend, Vince Perry. He'll be back on the show, too, because the subject, look, the book is called Identity Crisis, and this is what you said a few minutes ago. For people who are aging, and you're going to make a fortune in the next 15 years, to think about our population. So what you have to offer in this book, who should buy the book?
Well, I think obviously, people who are in the healthcare industry that are interested in branding and branding health and wellness. It's not just it's pharmaceutical drugs. I also have advice for over-the-counter health and wellness products. Colgate Total is a brand identity that I helped create.
You did? You did?
Yes.
Oh,
Back in the 90s,
wow.
yes. It was the first FDA-approved toothpaste because it had triclosan in it. It's the only one of its kind, so it had an FDA approval. So they came to healthcare branding to get some advice on it. But I think the book really speaks to anybody who's interested in how healthcare gets marketed to people with health issues, and anyone interested in branding, in fact, in general, because I have to talk about branding in general in order to get at the specifics of why healthcare branding differs from consumer goods branding. So there are processes in there that people with small businesses can use to learn how to brand their own organizations, how to do research, how to strategize, how to evaluate visual identities like logos and things like that. So I'm hoping for it to have, a wider audience beyond just people that work in the healthcare industry, although, as you point out, that is my primary target when I thought about writing the book.
Well, I'm going to read your book, then I'm going to give it to my doctor. So you're a branding expert talking to Vince Perry. Is your website perrybrandinggroup.com?
It is, yes.
Okay. So how did all of a sudden we all care about the how white our teeth are? That guys like you must have been sitting around some day smoking a cigar, having a nice little shot of whiskey, and you go, you know what, your teeth aren't white enough, Aaron, and we all of a sudden everybody has to have white teeth. What happened? That's branding, right?
Well, yeah, it comes from the customer. It basically, what do people buy when they buy toothpaste? What are they actually buying? I mean, they're certainly buying something that prevents tooth decay, at the very least, but there's a lot of emotional connections. People are buying toothpaste a lot of times to basically improve their appearance. Their breath smells fresher, and they their teeth are whiter. So there's a cosmetic desire there, and basically there's a tremendous number of toothpaste that focus on that whitening aspect, but it comes directly from what customers are looking for when they buy. That's more of a consumer-driven value than it is necessarily a company-driven value. They're just taking advantage of what people want.
But doesn't this come back to your book, The Identity Crisis, that we want whiter teeth so that we have better self-esteem, better self-identity? We're going to come back. Here's the question I want you to think about during the break, because our audience in Southern California can't wait for you, Vince Perry, to answer this question. How does the little guy, the guy that has a company, starting a company, how does he build a brand today? How does he get through all the noise, all the crazy? Even Marilyn's interested in that question. She's nodding her head, Aaron. Isn't that great? We'll be right back. The show is called The Business of Life. I'm your host, Coach Ron Tunick. The radio station you're listening to, KHTS, award-winning AM 1220.
Most of the time I do feel 25. LeBron James, I'm sorry, pal. You're my favorite. Steph Curry may have got the... No, it wasn't Steph last night, Aaron. It was Kevin Durant. It was Kevin Durant. Big shout out to you, LeBron. I love the way you handled your post-game interview. Also, my Dodgers are on tonight. They're playing in Cleveland. Coach used to have an office in Cleveland. One of the... if you ever get to Cleveland, that's where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is. Rock and roll.
You ever been?
Oh, yeah. I used to have an office there. Cleveland Browns are there, too. Who? Cleveland Browns. You know who they are? Nobody knows who the Cleveland... Yeah, all right, back to the business of life. I'm your host, Coach Ron Tunick. Another wonderful guest. He'll be back, too. He's honest. He's authentic. The subject of his book, Identity Crisis, come on, ladies and gentlemen, we all, as he said earlier, as Vince Perry said earlier, if you're buying any form of prescription drug or drug off the shelf, as you said, Vince, it goes to our self-worth, our self-identity. Something happens. We lose something in the process of paying for that drug, yes or no?
Yes, you're basically you're trying to replace something that illness has taken away, and hopefully these brands can help restore what illness has robbed them of.
Yeah, thank God I still have a full head of hair, so I don't feel robbed there. All right, so my question before the break, so do you, Aaron. Look at your head of hair. Wow, unbelievable. You can listen you can listen on hometownstation.com, but all our shows are on YouTube, so if you want to see what I look like, go to YouTube in a couple of days. All right, here's the question of the day. How does the little guy, somebody in Southern California, thousands of people listening, don't we, Aaron? Thousands?
Trillions.
No, just thousands, not trillions. Don't exaggerate. How does the little guy who's just started a business, maybe his business is 10 years old, how does he build the brand? You're an expert. You're a brand expert. You wrote the book called Identity Crisis about helping the pharmaceutical companies. But is branding?
Yeah, branding is branding, basically. The processes are the same. And I think the biggest mistake that startup companies make, or that these small businesses make, is that they go to work every day, they wake up every day, and all they think about is their brand. They're thinking of ways to connect it to customers. And what they often neglect is going out and really listening. You really have to start before you do anything, before you put pen to paper, by going out and doing some research and finding out exactly what customers are doing out there, because they're not thinking about your brand every day. They may not even think about your brand once a week or whatever. They'll think about it maybe when they need it, and they'll think of it. It occupies a small fraction of their attention. So what you need to do is to understand what is occupying their attention. What do they like most about their day? If they're going to work and your brand is related to somehow that they work or live, find out about that. Ask questions about potential customers and find out exactly what their pain points are. What's blocking them from really getting started in their day, from living better every day, and then try to find a way to insert your brand into that equation, rather than try to sort of shoehorn it into a life that you haven't paid attention to. So the biggest advice I have is go out and do a lot of customer research. Now, that's not that expensive, really. You can do some phone calls. You can do online surveys that are fairly inexpensive. But I like to talk to people one-on-one a lot. You can learn a lot in speaking to someone for 15 minutes, voice-to-voice, about them. So instead of saying, what do you think about my brand? How often would you use it? What did you use it instead of? Maybe start asking questions about them. What's your life like? What do you need help with? What are the things that bother you the most? What are the things you like most? And then how can I fit my brand into your life? I think that's the best piece of advice I can offer companies that are just starting up, and try to build your brand around a customer value and make that value reflected in your brand, so that when they take a look at you, they see a flattering reflection of their own values.
Vince Perry, we got to go. Great guest. I'll have you back in a couple of weeks. The book is called Identity Crisis, and when he comes back, we're going to get into the weeds. I'm going to read the book. We're going to get in the weeds. Vince Perry, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day in the East Coast. See you next week, or, I'll see you Thursday. I don't know. I'll see you 1 o'clock every day on KHTS, award-winning radio station. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you.